If a being existed in higher spatial dimensions, such as the fourth dimension or fifth dimension, the way it interacts with us would follow the same logic as a three-dimensional being interacting with a two-dimensional world. A four-dimensional or five-dimensional entity does not have to fully enter third dimension to be detectable. This is called the dimensional overlap, or the shadow analogy. The 4D or 5D entity can project a slice of itself into the third dimension, like a three-dimensional object casting a two-dimensional shadow on a wall. It can also manipulate matter or energy from outside our dimensional frame. And it can influence neural perception directly instead of physically appearing. To humans, this could look similar to light distortions, apparent shadows or silhouettes that shift in impossible ways. It could appear as shapes that morph because we're only seeing a cross-section of it. It could appear as sudden intuitive downloads or impressions instead of visual form, and time distortions, because higher dimensions can move outside linear time. A higher dimensional entity wouldn't need a face or body to communicate. Its communication channel would likely be quantum level interactions. Instead of speech, they would use electromagnetic field modulation, quantum information imprinting, alterations in our neural firing patterns, non-local entanglement-like effects, and resonant frequency communication, harmonics or vibration-based signaling. From our perspective, this could manifest as sudden knowing, visual symbolic communication, dreams or visions, synthetic experiences like seeing sound or feeling meaning, and it could also appear as pressure or heat sensations that are not tied to any physical cause. Human to higher dimension communication through consciousness, we'd have to take it a step further, and the consciousness would be as a multidimensional interference. And there is a growing hypothesis in neuroscience and quantum biology that the consciousness might not be produced by the brain, but filtered through it. So, if the consciousness is a higher dimensional field, and the brain is just the receiver, then a higher dimension being doesn't enter the brain. The brain simply tunes into a different level of consciousness. This is similar to a radio that picks up frequencies it's calibrated for. The brain as a frequency receiver would mean that meditation, trance, trauma, extreme emotion, psychedelics, and even near-death experiences could temporarily increase gamma wave synchronization. It could alter thalamic gating, and it could reduce default mode network filtering. These changes expand perception and reduce the 3D filter, making non-local information more accessible. In this state, humans might partially access higher dimensional information, archetypal symbolic language, non-local perception, and shared consciousness fields. And this is where telepathy, intuition, and downloads become theoretically possible. If consciousness extends beyond the third dimension, then humans may be able to communicate through the higher dimensional layer. If telepathy was a quantum or non-local information link, the possible mechanisms could be quantum entanglement of neural microtubules. And some theories, like the Penrose and Hamerhoff's OR, propose that quantum processes in microtubules create moments of non-local coherence. If two people become emotionally or energetically entangled, information might pass non-locally. Then there's shared higher dimensional field. If the consciousness is a field, minds might interface or overlap in higher dimensions. Thoughts become waves, emotions become a signal, and intentions become a force. Telepathy would be reading ripples in the shared field. And zero-point field communication, which hypothesized that fields that don't diminish with distance could carry emotional states, mental imagery, and intentional signals. This is similar to intuition, phenomena where someone senses danger or thinks of someone right before they call. We could then look at remote viewing as higher dimensional perception as well. If the consciousness can detach from time-space constraints, then remote viewing makes theoretical sense through three mechanisms. One would be non-local perception. Information might be accessed without travel, like quarrying a universal field. 2, dimensional projection, which consciousness projects a higher dimensional viewpoint, allowing you to see locations without physically moving. And 3, timeline probability access. Some remote viewing reports imply access to possible futures, parallel outcomes, and even events outside linear time. This aligns with the idea that higher dimensions contain our timeline as a static structure that we move through. My key unifying idea here is that communication with higher dimensional beings, telepathy, remote viewing, and quantum connections shares one core concept, and that is that consciousness is not bound to 3 dimensions. It is the bridge between dimensions. Just like a higher dimensional being wouldn't appear in 3 dimensions, it would interface through consciousness, because consciousness itself may be the only part of us that is multidimensional. If this were true, this means that you don't see a higher dimensional being with your eyes. You perceive them with your expanded consciousness. Telepathy isn't mind to mind, it's consciousness to consciousness. Remote viewing isn't movement, it's accessing another coordinate in the consciousness field. The structured metaphysical model is quantum plus consciousness plus dimensional theory, all unified. And we can break it into layers. Layer 1 would be the dimensional structure. 3-dimensional is physical space, length, width, and height, bound by linear time, and perception is filtered by human biology. 4-dimensional would be additional spatial access, not time. The ability to see all of the 3-dimension at once, like we see the surface of a 2-dimensional sheet of paper. And 4-dimensional can interact with our world by intersecting with it. A 5-dimensional structure would include multiple timelines or probability paths, and a being could perceive outcomes, potentials, and future paths. So in short, 4-dimensional sees our world from outside space, and 5-dimensional sees our world from outside time. This dimensional structure would be layer 1. Then we have layer 2, which is the quantum substructure, and that's the field of non-locality. The quantum layer offers mechanisms for higher dimensional interaction, like quantum non-locality. Quantum non-locality is when particles can correlate instantly across any distance. So, consciousness might exploit this layer to transmit information. Zero-point field, which is a universal energy field connecting all particles. So think of it as the ether higher beings could use to interface with 3D. And then quantum coherence in the brain. Microtubules in neurons may hold quantum states for short durations. This allows the brain to act as a transceiver for higher dimensional information. In other words, the brain does not create consciousness, it tunes into it. Layer 3 would be the conscious field, and it's core to all communication. The premise here would be the consciousness is not produced by the brain, is that it exists in a multidimensional field that the brain receives, modulates, and interprets. Therefore, higher dimensional beings communicate via consciousness states. It would mean humans access non-local information through expanded states, intuition, telepathy, and remote viewing. And it would also mean the frequency of consciousness determines what dimensions you can access. Layer 4 would be the interaction mechanism. So how a higher dimensional being communicates with humans might be through resonance matching. Your consciousness raises to a gamma or a theta coherent state. Their consciousness lowers or focuses to create overlap. Field overlap. The human mind and higher being share a temporary non-local interference. Or translation. The brain converts non-local, symbolic, or energetic input into imagery, emotions, visions, downloads, intuition, or telepathic impressions. Layer 5 would be human-to-human higher dimensional communication, and this explains telepathy, shared visions, and remote viewing beautifully. Meaning, two humans interact through consciousness field, not through the brain and not through physical space. It would mean intuition equals wave pattern in the field. So your thoughts would become vibrational patterns that ripple through the field. And another person receives the pattern. If they are resonantly aligned, then the brain converts it back to thoughts or images. And all this would mean that telepathy equals shared access to the same higher dimensional field. Layer 6 would be remote viewing as dimensional perception. Remote viewing results from detaching awareness from the brain's 3D constraints, entering the non-local consciousness field, and accessing a different coordinate in space or even time. So, with that, a 5D viewpoint would let a person see distant locations, events that were happening simultaneously elsewhere, and even future potentials.